It has happened to us, may God never bring this upon another Muslim. It was a very hard day. She was an elderly mother and she passed away. Blind mortar. The sun-scorched land with houses made of clay, this village is Lagro, located in Andar district of Ghazni province. And in the old cemetery, the newly made graves carry with them a sorrowful tale of the bitter stories and horrifying events from the past 20 years of occupation. Lagro village is located 4 kilometers from the center of Ghazni province in Andar district, where the people are largely impoverished, and their livelihoods depend on small businesses and labor work. A sorrowful tale of the bitter stories and horrifying events from the past 20 years of occupation. They have experienced events so traumatic that even the faces of the victims still show no trace of a smile. August 4, 2020. The last rays of the evening sun were shining over Lagro's farmland, and most of the people had gone to the mosque for prayer. A loud sound from the sky shook the village, and black smoke rose into the sky from a house on the edge of the village. The mortar shell had struck a house, hitting a corner where women and children had gathered together. In an instant, those family members who had been outside arrived at the scene with the villagers. The situation was so terrifying that even the eyewitnesses and family members could hardly bear to describe it.
I was standing there in the village with some other boys. I warned them not to go inside, told them not to come out. As I passed them, a mortar landed, then immediately a second mortar hit. When the second one landed, I was about halfway to my house, which is a little distance from the mosque. Suddenly, a boy from our side came running. He was the neighbor's son. He had just reached the scene where the mortar had struck. I called out to him, "Are you okay, son? What happened?"
Smoke was rising from the house, dust was in the air.
The boy's tongue was paralyzed, he wasn't saying a word. When I reached the scene myself, it was very hard to see. It happened to us. May God never bring this upon another Muslim. It was a very difficult day. My elderly mother came out. She said, "A mortar hit here." I told her, "It landed behind the house, don't come this way." She was very old. I sat her down with my children, then I went in. All were lying in the blood. That moment still haunts me deeply. One was my niece, her wedding was being prepared. 2 were my daughters-in-law, 2 were my grandchildren, 1 was my brother. When I reached the scene, my little daughters were screaming, saying, "She's over there, she's alive." I called the village and said, "Bring a car quickly, there are wounded people." It was difficult to distinguish between the martyrs and the wounded, because the incident had just occurred. And for many of the martyrs, their last cries were still echoing. Although the evening darkness was spreading over the village, and venturing outside was tied to the fear of death, the villagers, like soldiers, brought whatever means they had to transport the wounded to the scene of the incident. They had gathered there, the women had gathered like a broom bush from nearby homes. Some from this house, others from that one, a few from our own. Then there was a sudden explosion. When we arrived, some people were lying in blood here, others over there. My brother and I were close by. He was sitting on a rug, he was sick. I said to Amin, "What do you want?" He had injuries on his lower back and his knee. He was alive. They took him to Kabul. But when they brought him back from Kabul, he had passed away in the hospital. There were wounds on his lower back and his knee. Another girl is still here, her bones were shattered, small fragments still come out. Her father is helpless. They have nothing, they took her to Ghazni, but brought her back again.
There were 4 or 5 homes here, there were women, girls, and boys, 7 or 8 people were martyred.
They were my nephews. This is how God's will reached us.
In the dark night, the injured from the incident were first taken to the local hospital in the district, then transferred to Ghazni city. And from there to Kabul, all in the villagers' cars. However, due to their critical condition, 2 of the wounded were martyred.
I arrived at the scene. On one side of the house was my brother's home. And on the other side was mine. In the middle was my eldest brother's house. They had been sitting outside on the platform, a raised sitting area in front of the house. This was all fate, it wasn't even the usual time for sitting there. But they happened to be there at that moment. A mortar landed right there. Right on that spot. 2 of my sisters-in-law and 1 of my nieces were sitting there. They were martyred on the spot. When we reached the scene, the house was filled with dust. The villagers arrived, we carried the martyrs away. The rest had surface injuries, but some were badly wounded. My eldest brother was also among the injured. His wife and daughter were martyred. Another woman who was martyred was the wife of my cousin, her husband's name is Muhammad Reza.
They all were martyred there.
After that, we moved the wounded and the martyrs, first to Ghazni, and then from Ghazni to Kabul. That night, on the way, my eldest brother's grandson passed away. He was martyred on the road, near Ghazni.
When they were sent to Kabul, my eldest brother survived for about 7 or 8 days. Then, he was martyred too. We performed the afternoon prayer in congregation and had just come out of the mosque.
A call came for the martyr's brother. They said he wanted to go home. When we got to the house, a mortar had hit. Our car was stuck, it wasn't moving. When we arrived at the house, it was a devastating sight. I pray that no Muslim ever faces such a situation. It was like they were lying there like chickens, if you understand what I mean. Some had rickshaws, some had cars, and they brought them out as best as they could. The road was blocked, and we couldn't take the wounded out. We asked them to clear a little space so we could carry out the injured. It was impossible to tell who was dead and who was just wounded. It was hard to tell who was alive or dead. Everyone was screaming. But by the grace of God, the road was cleared, and we managed to bring out the wounded. But the martyrs stayed there. We took the wounded with us. The martyrs were brought later. There were 2 women who had been there, from that nearby village. We brought our martyrs here and buried them. The wounded were taken to Kabul. The other women were taken back to their villages.
Among the martyrs was a member of this family whose wife was martyred. He himself had planned to return the next day after spending a night abroad. But his last phone call from the village was cut off. And he immediately booked a ticket to return home. But he returned at a time when the martyrs had already been laid to rest. And flags were waving over their graves.
One night, my brother called me from Quetta, a city in Pakistan, and asked me to come home. I asked him why, and he said everything was fine. When I tried calling home, no one picked up the phone. There was no one to answer my calls. Then I called my mother-in-law and asked her what was going on. She told me she wasn't sure. She said, "My son went out in the afternoon and hasn't come back yet." Around 1:30 a.m., I tried calling again. By the time the night passed, I had fallen asleep. The next morning, around 9 a.m., I woke up and prayed. I had missed calls, around 20 calls. My friends called and asked how I was doing, and why I hadn't answered. I said I didn't know, I hadn't realized what was happening. They told me, "We've bought tickets for you. You should go home." I asked them, "What's going on? Why should I go home?" They said, "Just go. You'll find out everything when you get there." Some of the villagers called me and said, "Come outside. There has been a mortar strike at your home. Some are martyred, some are wounded." I said, "All right, I will find out soon." 2 nights had passed by the time I reached home. People were sitting in the house, and I asked them what had happened. I didn't go back home that night, I spent the whole night there. My mother asked, "Where were you?" I told her I was in the room. She said, "But you weren't in the room." I replied, "I was here all along." Then I got some water, performed ablution, and prayed. My whole family was there, and we had tea together. Afterward, I went and opened my door. It was a very difficult situation. There was blood everywhere, and the wounded were lying around. There were many children, and it was impossible to tell which of the wounded were serious and which were not. We could only tell when someone was severely wounded, and we would take them away. There was one elderly woman who was left behind. We were carrying the children. It was some time later when we realized she was wounded. We took her to the hospital, but she passed away. There was an old man who was sitting calmly. At that moment, he was sitting near the window. It didn't seem like he was wounded at all. But when we took him to the hospital, and then later to Kabul, he was martyred either the 3rd or the 5th day.
The attacks by the invaders and their collaborators on the village and surrounding areas, the suffering of the people, the random shelling of mortars, and the destruction and devastation pushed the people's patience to its limits, accelerating the process of uniting the resistance against the occupation. The Mujahideen, with their limited resources, stood against occupation and oppression, showing their response to the invaders and their collaborators through the trigger of their rifles. The struggle, which initially seemed impossible to win, gradually turned into a reality as months and years passed. Achievements were made, and on the battlefield, the enemy faced consecutive defeats.
When we were young, those occupiers who had come would roam around here, carrying out raids on people. They would harass the people, dig up graves, and desecrate the dead. They spread terror and violence. In many places, they would conduct raids, disturb the graves, and martyr the children. That's when it became clear to us, we had to stand against them. We had to fight them, even if it meant we would be martyred. If we are martyred, Allah will reward us on the Day of Judgment. And if we survive, that too is a blessing, a privilege for us. We continued with jihad because when the infidel occupiers came here, they occupied our Afghanistan. They committed atrocities. Our sisters, mothers, and children were all martyred. It was these circumstances that forced us to take up arms, to fight against them, to stand up and resist their oppression.
Our resistance had two main reasons. The first was that our homeland was occupied.
Our own faith and conscience could not accept that the occupiers should remain here. The second reason was that their oppression, barbarity, and cruelty reached such levels that every Muslim's heart was filled with the spirit to say, I can no longer stay at home. I must stand in front of the occupiers, using whatever strength I have and whatever resources are available to me.
The freedom earned through the blood of the Mujahideen brought a new dawn to this village. The harsh, death-bound nights came to an end. While the wounds inflicted on the hearts of the people by the occupiers have not yet fully healed, under the umbrella of the Islamic system, hopes for a bright future for Afghanistan have begun to unfold.
Now, praise be to God, it feels like we have entered another world, like we have come to a completely different realm. It has been almost 2 or 4 months since I arrived. In these 2 months, alhamdulillah, we haven't heard any gunshots, no raids, no sound of planes, bombs, or artillery. We haven't heard anything at all. When we go out, we have a car or a motorcycle with us, and alhamdulillah, no one has harassed us in the desert, and no one in the village has troubled us. In fact, just like I am now, all Muslims, alhamdulillah, are happy, safe, and in peace. There's so much joy and peace, alhamdulillah, there's no difficulty. Now that the Islamic Emirate has come, whether we go out at night, during the day, or even stay at home, we no longer worry. No one can come and look at us with bad intentions, nor can the wrong people pass by us.
The Islamic Emirate has given us a new life.
It has granted us a new life, whether we go to the mosque at night, or during the day. Whether we host guests in the village, or our neighbors invite us to their homes, we no longer have to worry. If we return home at midnight, at 1 in the morning, or at 10, we no longer have to worry about thieves coming to our house or about someone bad passing through our area.
Countless Mujahideen sacrificed their lives in the struggle against the occupation. But their dreams are now nurtured by their children. From the mountains, they stand ready to defend the faith, the country, and the people. Whether in the heat of summer or the cold of winter nights, they lie in ambush, with the words, Allahu Akbar, on their lips, waiting for the enemy. As a national, independent, and dedicated media outlet, we reflect the voice of the people. We present the atrocities, horrors, and crimes committed during the 20-year occupation of Afghanistan to the countrymen and international community through a documentary format. If you have witnessed incidents such as raids, killings, atrocities, or other acts committed by foreign invading forces in your area during 20-year occupation, you can share them with us via WhatsApp. This will allow us to document them accurately and prioritize their broadcast on national TV screen. Our contact number, 0744343668.